Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Kelly David from the Foundation for Angelman Syndrome Therapeutics. I'm here with Rob Komorowski and Andrew Traube-Childs from Biogen. They'll be providing an update on the Angelman CSF collection study. I will now turn it over to them to get started.
Great, thanks Kelly and welcome. Thank you to the Angelman syndrome community for attending today's webinar and thank you for your interest in learning more about Biogen's CSF collection study. We're really pleased to have the opportunity to share this information with you, and during our time together we'll make introductions and talk a bit about Biogen and our research in Angelman syndrome, and then we'll dive into details related to the Angelman syndrome CSF collection study and ending with a Q&A. So let's get started. So first, I'm Rob Komorowski. I'm a senior clinical scientist here at Biogen, and I've had the pleasure of supporting this program for almost 4 years now. I feel really lucky to be a part of this vibrant community. And today I'm joined by my colleague, Andrew Traube-Childs, who's the study lead for the CSF collection study, and he'll be sharing study details with you. So in case you're not familiar, Biogen is a global biotechnology company. It's based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And at Biogen, our mission is very clear. We aim to be pioneers in neuroscience. So Biogen discovers, develops, and delivers worldwide innovative therapies for people living with serious neurologic and neurodegenerative diseases, as well as related therapeutic adjacencies. So today, Biogen has the leading portfolio of medicines to treat multiple sclerosis, has introduced the first approved treatment for spinal muscular atrophy, commercializes biosimilars of advanced biologics, and is focused on advancing research programs in multiple sclerosis, neuroimmunology, Alzheimer's disease and dementia, neuromuscular disorders, movement disorders, ophthalmology, neuropsychology, immunology, acute neurology, and neuropathic pain. So as you may know, Biogen, Ionis, and Roche have formed a collaborative research partnership. And one of the studies being conducted through this collaboration is called the CSF collection study, and that's being led by Biogen. So this is the study we'll be discussing in detail during today's webinar. The other study being conducted as part of this partnership is called the Frisia study, and that's being led by Roche. These two studies don't involve any drug. Their purpose is to help design possible drug trials for AS in the future. Our companies are working together on these two studies in collaboration with researchers and families in the Angelman community so that important scientific information on Angelman syndrome gets collected and shared. So in parallel to these non-drug studies, our companies continue to develop independently research potential drug candidates for future clinical trials. So the purpose of the ASCSF collection study is to see if UBE3A protein can be used as a biomarker for Angelman syndrome, and if there are other biomarkers for the disease. So biomarkers are characteristics or substances in the body that you can measure. They tell us how a body is doing or how a body changes as a result of disease or response to a treatment. And they're really critical for drug development process because they can help us select the doses of the drug to test in a trial. They can also help us monitor the safety of a drug when it's being tested in a clinical trial. And they can also tell us if the drug is doing what we think it will do and working in the way we think it will work. Angelman syndrome occurs when there's a problem in the gene called UBE3A, and this results in low amounts of UBE3A being made in some brain cells. And the reason this is problematic is because UBE3A is needed for correct development of the nervous system, including the brain. So as a result, UBE3A protein may be a biomarker for Angelman syndrome, but it's never been measured in the CSF of people living with AS. So measuring these UBE3A levels, as well as looking for other potential biomarkers for Angelman syndrome in the CSF, will give us really important information into the disease and what can be measured in future drug development clinical trials. Because the involvement of UBE3A in Angelman syndrome, we're conducting this CSF collection study. So now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Andrew Traube-Childs, to tell you a bit more about the study. Andrew?
Thanks, Rob. This CSF collection study was launched in December 2019, and enrollment is expected to close at the end of August this year, so 2021. The study has been conducted at 5 centres in the US, and we're looking to enrol approximately about 20 Angelman participants. Unfortunately, the enrolment into this study was heavily impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. As of today, we have now enrolled 4 participants into the CSF collection study and are looking for a further 16. To be eligible to participate in the study, the person you represent must meet all entry criteria. Main 3 are presented here. Firstly, they must have a genetically confirmed Angelman syndrome diagnosis. Secondly, they must be 50 years old or younger. And thirdly, and most importantly, have a planned procedure that will require the use of general anaesthesia or conscious sedation. This procedure must be unrelated to this study and could include, but is not limited to, procedures such as dentistry, GI tube fitting and MRIs. It is not possible to enrol the person you represent without this. If the person you represent is scheduled for a procedure requiring sedation at one of the study hospitals, you'll be contacted by the study staff who will explain more about the study, what it entails, and ask whether you would like the person you represent to be considered for enrolment. If the study is of interest to you, you will be provided with more information about the study in the form of an informed consent form. Upon reading the informed consent form, if you would like the person you represent to be considered further for the study, you'll be asked to sign the informed consent form. Prior to signing the informed consent form, if you have any questions about the study, you will have the opportunity to discuss these with the study doctor. If you sign the consent form, the person you represent will enter a screening period that may last up to about 30 days. During this time, the study doctor will talk to you about the health history of the person you represent. The study doctor will also conduct a physical examination and do some tests to confirm that the person you represent is eligible for the study. If the study is suitable for the person you represent, they will have a sampling visit after all the screening assessments have been completed and they are confirmed to be eligible. This can occur on the same day, but no more than 30 days after screening begins. During the sampling visit, the person you represent will have a cerebral spinal fluid sample collected through a procedure known as a lumbar puncture. They will also have a blood sample taken from his or her vein for biomarker and DNA assessments. The lumbar puncture will be carried out while the person you represent is under general anaesthesia that is required for the procedure that you are already scheduled to have. The lumbar puncture should not take longer than 30 minutes, but the person you represent may need to continue to lie down for a further 60 minutes after the procedure to reduce the likelihood of any discomfort. You and the person you represent will also need to be available for a follow-up contact about 72 hours or 3 days after the sampling visit. The person you represent will usually be discharged following the lumbar puncture once the hospital has confirmed it is safe to do so. The follow-up contact will generally then be conducted over the telephone once you and the person you represent are home. As safety is our highest priority, study participants will be assessed and monitored at the study site and during the follow-up contact for any side effects. The study will not directly help the participant, but he or she will help researchers improve the understanding of AS and help find potential biomarkers for use in the AS clinical trials in the future. When a study participant joins the CSF collection study, you will have the opportunity to opt in to place them on a priority screening list. The priority screening list may give the participant the opportunity to screen for a planned investigational study in the future. However, this does not guarantee enrolment as several requirements would need to be fulfilled prior to enrolling in an interventional trial. We are very grateful to all families who have volunteered to take part in the research and drug development efforts. As discussed in an earlier slide, there are 5 study hospitals that are conducting the CSF collection study as outlined in this slide. If you are interested in learning more about the study and possible involvement for the person you represent, please contact the location that is most convenient for you. Thank you for your time and attention. We can now open it up to questions.
Thank you both so much. This has been incredibly informative. We do have a few questions for the community or from the community. The first one is, what is a priority screening?
I can take that one, Kelly. When the person you represent joins the CSF collection study, you will have the opportunity to opt in to place them on a priority screening list. The priority screening list may give the person you represent the opportunity to screen for a planned investigational study. However, this does not guarantee enrolment as several requirements would need to be fulfilled prior to enrolling them in an interventional trial.
Okay, thank you. And can priority screening be transferred from one patient or family to another participant if they're not eligible for the interventional trials?
No, unfortunately not. Priority screening is only available to those participants actually in the CSF study.
Okay, and if I were to participate at one location for the study, can I apply my priority screening at a different location for the next study?
Yes, all future study locations will honour the priority screening status.
Okay, and how will the person I represent's priority screening status be honored?
When you join the CSF collection study, you will have the opportunity to opt in to place the person you represent on the priority screening list. This will be documented in the participant study notes, so the study team will be aware of which participants are eligible for the priority screening at the start of an interventional trial. IQVIA, who is helping Biogen conduct this study, will keep a full list of those patients, those that are eligible for priority screening across all the sites. Biogen will not have access to any patient identifiers. The tracker will also detail whether the priority screening will take place at the hospital site where the patient is enrolled in the CSF collection study, or whether this will take place at an alternative hospital.
Okay, thank you. And is there an age limit for the trial?
Yeah, Kelly, I can answer that. So participants may not be over 50 years old at the time of informed consent for the study.
Okay, and if I don't live near a study site, but the person I represent is having a procedure which requires anesthesia, can we still participate?
So yes, as long as your insurance covers the pre-scheduled procedure to be carried out at one of the study sites, and the person you represent meets all the eligibility criteria for the study, then they'll be able to participate.
Okay, and will I, as the caregiver, receive the results from the participant's sample?
So participant-specific results will not be shared with the caregivers. As is standard practice for clinical trials, the details of the person you represent will be pseudo-anonymized for the purpose of the study and to ensure the patient confidentiality. So their details will be replaced with a study number, which cannot be linked back to the person you were responsible for outside the study site or the hospital.
Okay, and why is spinal fluid necessary? Couldn't you just take a blood sample?
Yeah, it's a good question. CSF or cerebral spinal fluid may provide important information about Angelman syndrome that you really can't see in the blood, urine, or saliva. So by collecting a sample of spinal fluid, we'll be able to learn more about Angelman syndrome and test for potential biomarkers.
Thank you. And the last question is, if the person I represent is not scheduled for a procedure, can he or she still take part?
No, so a prerequisite for the study is that the participants have to be attending the study site for an already pre-scheduled procedure that requires anesthesia or conscious sedation. So the reason for this is to minimize patient trauma and any upset or burden to the caregivers or parents by having to make an additional visit to the hospital purely for the study.
Okay. Thank you. I truly appreciate both of you taking the time today to share this information, these updates with the community. If there are any further questions or information the community needs, clinicaltrials.gov will have the most up-to-date information.
Great. Thanks so much, Kelly.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you both.